The first thing we didn't touch too much yet are birds of agriculture land. We already spoke about them today a lot, and we promised you that we will tell you about problems these birds are facing. I think all of you already have an idea what can you imagine when we say birds of agriculture land. These are very common birds, or maybe, unfortunately, maybe better to say these used to be very common birds. Because very sad on this group of birds is that it is the most decreasing group of birds in Europe. And another very sad fact is that this depends on European politics to change this situation, and that's why we feel that this won't be easy at all to manage to improve this situation, because we are dealing, ornithologists from many countries are dealing for a very long time with these problems, and the only reason we reached is that the decline is slowly. It hasn't stopped. It's still decreasing, but not so rapidly as it used to be before. So, in the beginning, I am very sorry, because in the beginning it will be a little bit checked, centralized presentation. I would like to introduce you problem of this agriculture land at several examples from our country. These birds I will speak about, all of you already know, because we mentioned them during our lessons, and you have heard already a lot of them. So first, let's look at partridge. Partridge was a very famous hunting bird, very common, very abundant. And in Czechoslovakia, before Second World War, we had 6 million those birds. Nowadays, we have 45,000. If you realize, well, we have split. We are no more Czechoslovakia, we are Czech and Slovak. Even so, in this case, if we would count, we should have at least 3 million of partridges up to now. Everybody, I think, will agree with me that 3 million and 45,000 is really a very big difference, which is really alarming what is happening with our countryside. Or in the last century, a very common bird was a crake. We already talked about this bird a lot, that crake you can hear quite easily, but it's very difficult to see it. This species decreased to incredible only 200 or 400 calling males in our country. And then came collapse of our agriculture. And during this collapse, the population was growing up. So here we saw direct influence of agriculture, because as soon as the agriculture wasn't so intensive anymore, crake was going up again. Lapwing. We talked about lapwing a lot. I already mentioned that lapwing is very interesting, very nice bird. We will have in our materials, I promised you already in my first presentation regarding the questionnaire. And this bird in our country decreased 90% in the last 25 years. I think you agree with me, these are really horrible numbers. Another one, crested lark, also in past very common bird. Nowadays in Czech Republic has almost disappeared. It is inhabitant of dry country, of open country. He likes places without vegetation for nesting. And the situation with this bird, at least in Czech Republic, is so bad that different populations are already isolated and aren't communicating anymore. This is the worst what can happen with some species, because I think all of you knows how important it is to exchange genetic information between different populations. Otherwise, all the population can collapse. And we have, because of the intensive agriculture, we have not only crested lark, but also several other species who are in this situation. Another I can remember is, for example, the little owl. In our country, it also has only just isolated populations which don't communicate anymore. And we can find more, and unfortunately more and more species who are like this. The worst situation is with birds like crested lark and other birds who are really connected to one place. They are not migrating, they are stable. They live almost the whole life in one place. This is, for these species, is very difficult to occupy new new places that there could continue exchange of genetic information. So these were 4 small stories from our country. Maybe you ask now, oh, is it so bad in our country too? To tell the truth, I don't know. But the reality looks that it will be very similar. Not everywhere the same, but that it should be similar looks this graph. Look at these 3 lines. These are, we call it indicators of common European birds. You see, it's from the whole Europe. These data are collected throughout the Europe. So there are data from all of countries we are sitting here. And we see that index of birds of agricultural land is decreasing the most. We see here almost 60% decline in the whole Europe. These numbers are alarming and telling that at least some of stories I showed you from our country will be very similar in your country as well. Well, our country and Slovak as well, we had really critical situation. And commonly, western part of Europe, the situation is also very bad. A little bit better it is in the eastern part of Europe up to now. So Macedonian, please keep your nature diverse and keep them birds alive. Because if the rest of Europe, it's getting very quickly worse and worse. What are the reasons? This is a little bit complicated question, but there are more reasons, altogether connected to the intensive agriculture we have. We are facing the problem with intensive production, with need of getting money, as much crops as possible, to breed as much as cattle as possible, to get as much fish as possible from our ponds. And this is the reason why this problem arose. So let's go through different points, what it can cause. Imagine a wetland. Today in the morning, when we were sitting on the bank of the pond, we were talking about the wetland. And if you remember, Christoph told that wetland birds are the most vulnerable species or birds we have, because they are adapted to find food in a woodland. They can't put the beak into a hard soil. And many wetlands are drying out. Doesn't matter whether it's because the temperature is increasing or whether a human made it. We don't solve what is the reason, but the reality is that many of wetlands are drying out. And imagine wetland like on this picture, and that there are nesting these two birds, lapwing and black-tailed godwit. If we change this meadow into field, or if it dries out, what for possibilities do they have? So, first possibility, what you can do is to disappear. If you can't find food there, if you then don't have what to eat, how to feed your chicks, you can disappear and try to find some better place in a different piece of country or of earth. Or another possibility you have, and this possibility tried the lapwing, is to adapt. In our country, this bird, I am not sure about the situation in the others, but I believe it's very similar. This bird it's trying to adapt. When we don't have so many wetlands anymore, this lapwing started to breed very often on our fields. So we could say, hurrah, they are the winners. They have chosen a new biotop, everything will be okay. But it's not so easy, because we have the intensive agriculture. And this intensive agriculture makes them very big troubles to keep the chicks alive. Look at these pictures. Do you see the nest of lapwing? The yellow arrow is going to the nest. And now imagine if we, before tractors and other big machines were investigated or started to be used in a big amount, the kind how we proceed the agriculture was a little bit different way. You see it on the picture on the left. When people used to seed the seeds, other techniques, the original techniques, it was very easy to avoid a nest if they noticed it, or it was quite a big possibility that they simply miss it. But now, if you imagine how in which speed the tractors and other machines move, it's impossible for men driving these machines to notice there is a nest on the ground. And many nests disappear in the very beginning because lapwings arrive to their breeding places very early. They are arriving before people are coming to their fields, and they start breeding earlier when we do whatever with field. So they lay their eggs, they start the incubation, and after technique is coming to the field to seed the crops and so they don't have any chance to survive this situation. And in the circle, you see how many nests are destroyed during the first sowing, and the green part are only the successful nests. So you see that almost half nests are totally lost just in the same beginning. Another point, very important even in our country, is loss of heterogeneity of agricultural land. We told that biodiversity depends on different biotopes. The more species you have in a meadow, we told in the morning, the more diverse it will be. The most flowers there are, the more insects there will be, the more birds will occupy this place. And in our country happened something what can be alarming to whole Europe. In the second half of the 20th century, there came collectivization. And you can look at those maps. What happened? Small fields were put it together to one large field. What we won, one priority. We have the biggest fields in the whole Europe, but unfortunately it means we have the less biodiverse agricultural land, and all the birds are suffering from this. And here we can see birds suffering from the reality if in our land there are missing places with higher grass, places with bushes, places with flowers. Now I tried that you have ideas whether in your country it is different or not. So I tried to download several maps. We are here 6 countries. You see 6 pictures. These are views on your country. I just pick up 40 or 30 kilometers from the capital, east from the capital. Really what I told here, the main problem is in our country, in Slovakia. It's something from what happened, what is very, very difficult or maybe impossible to return. So, but I wanted to show you that you realize and you avoid these mistakes in your lands too. And now modern machines. These are our wonderful, huge fields. And you can imagine that in such a field, there is really very difficult to live. When harvesting is coming, different animals don't have any chance to escape and are getting dead. On the small picture, you see the vehicle which usually every spring destroys many nests of yearly breeding birds of the country land. Another thing is that with the heavy technique, also the soils gets more and more damp. And there is the problem then also with the water. If you have very damp soil and it's raining, it's very difficult for rain to get inside, and it stays just muddy and cause another problems. Yeah. So you see here species which these big machines can influence. And we were sitting close to the meadow today in the morning, and it was exactly the biotop where we could evade this bird. A meadow with quite a high grass where they could be hidden and breeding, and their chicks could without problem grow. But many meadows are no more handily harvested, but we use also, even in meadows, we use hard technique, and unfortunately in a bad bad way. It is very common that people or tractors are moving in the circle to the middle. And this causes very big problems because waders and other birds of agricultural land have an instinct to hide. It's very common that these birds are really, you can get 1 meter, 2 meters, unless they fly away. They first what they want to do is just to hide and not fly away. But if the tractor or something else comes to 1 meter, it's already too late for them to escape. And they are afraid to come to the open place, so they are concentrating in the center of the meadow and waiting for their set end. These pictures are how it ends. Destroy clutches and dead chicks. Unfortunately, this happens very, very often. Another problem is intensive cattle and sheep farming. Here you see, this is a nice picture. I like this picture. Sheep on a very nice meadow. If it looks like this, it's okay. But many times, also the sheep or cattle farming can be very intensive, and the grass there could be very, very low. And if there is not such a big place, and around you have diverse places where where birds can hide as well. So then this is okay. Then they can fly and look for some food on this low grassland. But if this is so intensive that you don't have anything, then just the grazed down lawn. So there is for birds no possible where to hide, where to put their eggs, and simply the biodiversity of these places is also decreased a lot. And I can't forget chemistry. Chemistry is something very commonly used during the many last years, and we use insecticides, pesticides, and the result is that we decrease the amount of insect. I think it was mentioned here already that we have a huge decline of number of insects. It's more than 70%, maybe 80% of the amount. And also herbicides and other products are doing our meadows just meadows with grass and no flowers, no insect, not alive. Unfortunately, as I told in the beginning, the solution is very difficult. Everything is about change of European policy. There are several possibilities which could improve this situation, which many countries are suggesting, but we hope that it won't take too long time until it will be implemented, and it won't be too late for our birds of agriculture land. So thank you for your attention.